I thought visiting my aunt's house would just be a quiet weekend, but my cousin Nathan turned it into an emotional battlefield. From guilt trips to twisted lies, he pitted family members against each other until we couldn't even tell what was true anymore. When he finally tried to control my mom with the cruelest manipulation tactic I've ever seen, I lost it. This wasn't just toxic, it was a calculated game. So this happened a couple of months ago when I went back home to visit family. For context, I live a few hours away now, but my mom Linda, 58, still lives in the old family house. My cousin Nathan, 31, also stays there sometimes, because according to him, life just keeps screwing him over. That's been his line since we were kids. Anyway, I showed up for what was supposed to be a chill weekend to just me, my mom, and my Aunt Carol, Nathan's mom, 55. Nathan was already there, sprawled on the couch like he owned the place, wearing sweatpants and sipping a beer even though it was barely 1 p.m. The second I walked in, he smirked and said, "Oh look, Mr. Successful finally decided to visit his peasant relatives." I laughed it off because I know that's just Nathan's way of saying hi, but there was the sharpest of his tone that immediately set the mood. Dinner that night was when things started to unravel. Mom had made roast chicken, and everyone was sitting around the table. Aunt Carol asked me about my job, and I started telling them about the recent project I'd been working on. Nathan cut in with, "Wow, must be nice to brag about your fancy life while the rest of us are just trying to survive." I looked at him half expecting he was joking, but he just glared at me. My mom tried to smooth things over with, "Nathan, don't be rude, he's just sharing." But that only made him roll his eyes. Then he turned it around on Aunt Carol. "Of course you'll defend him, Mom. You've always had favourites. Maybe if you cared about me the way you care about everyone else, I wouldn't be stuck here." The whole table went silent. Carol's face fell, and I could see she was trying hard not to cry. I felt guilty even though I hadn't done anything wrong. That's the thing with Nathan, he knows exactly how to twist words so everyone feels like they owe him something. Later that night, I overheard him talking to my mom in the kitchen. He was saying things like, "You know, if you really love me, you'd help me out more. I can't keep living like this." He was leaning hard into guilt, his voice low and heavy. I walked in at that point, and Nathan gave me this look like I just interrupted some sacred moment. He smirked again and said, "Guess Mr. Perfect wants to lecture me now." That was when I realised this weekend wasn't going to be about reconnecting with family. It was going to be about surviving Nathan's emotional games. The next morning, I woke up to raised voices in the living room. At first, I thought maybe it was the TV, but then I recognised Nathan's voice, sharp, accusing, dramatic. When I walked in, he was standing over Aunt Carol, waving his arms like he was auditioning for some soap opera. "You don't even care about me, Mom. You care more about appearances than your own son," he yelled. Carol sat slumped in her chair, eyes red from crying. She spotted me and whispered, "Please, don't get involved." But Nathan spun around the second he realised I was there. "Perfect timing," he sneered. "Maybe you can explain why your mom always has money to help you out, but mine can't even give me a little support when I'm drowning." I froze. My mom? She's never given me extra money, and in fact, I've been helping her with bills since I got my promotion. I told him straight up, "That's not true, Nathan. I've been the one in." Before I could finish, he cut me off. "Oh, sure, deny it, lie. That's what you do best, isn't it? You think you're better than me because you escaped this family." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My mom walked in at that point with a laundry basket, and Nathan immediately pivoted. His tone softened, his eyes welled up, and he sighed like the world was against him. "Aunt Linda, you understand, right? You know what it's like to struggle. Don't you think it's unfair that your son has everything while I'm stuck here with nothing?" My mom just stared at him, clearly caught off guard. She set down the basket and said quietly, "Nathan, you're 31. You can't keep blaming everyone else for your choices." That's when he snapped. He slammed his fist on the table so hard the coffee mugs rattled. "You think I chose this? You think I like being treated like garbage while he gets worshipped?" He jabbed a finger at me, his face twisted in rage. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just resentment, there was a deep bitterness there, like he'd been collecting every slight, real or imagined, for years. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Nathan, nobody's against you, but you can't guilt trip everyone into giving you what you want." He laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh, more like a bark. "Though, listen to him, the voice of reason. You know what, maybe you should just leave, since you're too good for us." The room went dead quiet. Carol looked crushed, my mom looked exhausted, and I felt like I was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't pull back from. That was the moment I realised Nathan wasn't just toxic, he thrived on making everyone else miserable, because that way, he wasn't the only one drowning. By mid-afternoon, the tension in the house had reached a level you could almost taste. I was in the living room, trying to scroll through my phone to distract myself, when Nathan came storming in, dragging my younger cousin Emma, 28, into the conversation. She had been quietly reading in the corner, trying to stay out of his path, but Nathan wasn't having it. "Oh, perfect, Emma," he said, voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Just sitting there, pretending nothing's wrong. Don't you think you should side with me for once?" Emma's face went pale. "Nathan, I'm not picking sides," she started, but he cut her off mid-sentence. "Not picking sides, that's rich coming from someone who takes his fancy vacations and ignores everyone else's struggles." I stepped in, trying to protect her from the onslaught. "Nathan, seriously, knock it off. You're twisting everything. Nobody here is against you." He turned to me, eyes narrowing, and suddenly his tone shifted, compa venomous. "Oh, I see how it is. You've always been the golden boy. Everyone loves you, and I'm the failure, but it's fine, I'll just sit here and let everyone pretend I don't exist." Carol, trying to intervene, said softly, "Nathan, please, you're overreacting. We're family. You don't have to do this." He laughed bitterly, a laugh that made my skin crawl. "Overreacting, Mom? Do you even hear yourself? You think it's an overreaction that your son makes everyone feel guilty just by breathing? That your perfect little nephew gets all the attention while I rot in the corner?" Then, the real manipulation began. Nathan leaned closer to my mom, his voice dropping so loud it was almost a whisper. "You know, Mom, I could just leave, I could never come back, but then you'd be alone. Who would listen to you? Who would care about you if I wasn't here to make you feel needed?" I froze. That line, the guilt trip, hit hard. My mom's face softened, her shoulders sagged, and for a moment it seemed like she might actually believe him. I couldn't let it happen. I stood up, my voice trembling but loud. "No, this isn't love or care. Nathan, this is manipulation. You're using Mom's heart against her, and you know it. This has to stop. Nathan's eyes flicked to me, a mix of shock and fury. So now you're the moral compass too. Great. Come lecture me while you sit in your perfect life and pretend you know suffering. I felt my blood boil, but instead of arguing, I took a deep breath. I know suffering. I also know that guilt-tripping your family into bending to your will isn't the way to deal with it. You're hurting everyone here, and it's not okay. For the first time that day, Nathan didn't respond immediately. He just stared at me, lips pressed tight, hands twitching. It was the calm before the storm, and I knew we were heading straight for showdown. By late afternoon, the house felt like it was about to explode. Nathan had retreated to the couch, but his presence was suffocating, like a dark cloud hovering over every conversation. Aunt Carol tried to make small talk, nervously offering snacks and asking about everyone's day, but Nathan wasn't having it. "Oh, look at you all, pretending everything's normal, acting like I'm the crazy one," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. My mom tried to keep her voice gentle. "Nathan, please, we're just trying to enjoy the afternoon," he scoffed. "Enjoy? How can we enjoy anything when everyone's ignoring the real issues? Everyone's happy to look at me and whisper behind my back, like I'm some villain, and you, Mr. Perfect," he jabbed a finger at me. "You just sit there and smile, thinking that makes you innocent." That was it. Something snapped inside me. I'd spent my whole life trying to avoid drama, to keep the peace with Nathan, but watching him manipulate my mom and Aunt Carol was unbearable. "No, Nathan, this isn't a joke, and you're not a victim here," I yelled, finally losing my calm. "You've spent years twisting everyone's emotions so you feel like the centre of attention, and it ends today." He stared at me, mouth slightly open, like he couldn't believe I had the audacity to confront him. Then his lips curled into a cold smile. "Oh, so now you're the hero too, the moral crusader, how noble." Emma, who had been hiding in the corner, finally spoke up. "Nathan, stop, this is ridiculous, you're making everyone miserable, and it's not fair." His gaze shifted to her, icy and sharp. "And you've been siding with him the whole time, don't think I haven't noticed." Aunt Carol broke down completely. "Nathan, this isn't helping anything, you're destroying all of us." That was the turning point. Nathan leaned back, his hands trembling slightly, the first crack in his armor. He realized, maybe for the first time, that he was alone in this emotional battlefield. I softened my tone, keeping my voice firm but calm. "Nathan, you don't have to act like this to get attention. You can talk to us, but you can't manipulate us. You can't play guilt and anger like it's a game." For a moment, there was silence. Nathan's shoulders slumped. He avoided looking at anyone, muttering under his breath. Then, finally, he spoke in a quieter, almost defeated tone. I just wanted someone to care." My mom slowly approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We care, Nathan, but all this, it hurts us too. We can help you, but you have to let go of this toxic behavior." Nathan didn't respond. He just buried his face in his hands. The tension in the room slowly started to ease, like the storm had passed but left a trace of fear and exhaustion. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. The family had survived the emotional onslaught, and maybe, just maybe, Nathan could learn to ask for support without hurting the people who love him. The next morning, the house felt different. Not light or cheerful, but quieter, less tense. Nathan had retreated to his room early, probably nursing a pounding headache or an emotional hangover from the previous day. I found Aunt Carol in the kitchen, sipping her coffee like she hadn't slept. Her hands were still shaky. "I don't know how much more of that I can take," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every time he does this, I feel like I failed as a parent." I sat across from her. "Carol, you didn't fail. Nathan has issues, sure, but none of this is your fault. You love him, and he's just stuck in a cycle." Mom came in with a tray of breakfast, trying to bring some normalcy back. She smiled at us, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "We need to be careful, but we also can't let him keep controlling the house like that." At that moment, Nathan opened his door and peeked out. His hair was messy, eyes bloodshot, but there was something different, a vulnerability that had been missing before. I didn't mean to ruin everything yesterday," he muttered. Carol placed her hand over his. "Nathan, you didn't ruin everything, but you have to understand how your actions affect people. We can't keep walking on eggshells around you." Nathan nodded slowly, and for the first time, there was no sarcasm, no defensiveness. Just silence. Emma, who had come into the kitchen to grab some cereal, added quietly, "We want to help you, Nathan, but we can't do it if you keep treating us like enemies." He looked at her, a faint glimmer of guilt in his eyes. "I guess I've been trying to fight feelings instead of dealing with them. I didn't realize how far I went." Mom finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "This is your chance to break this cycle. We are willing to listen, to support you, but you have to meet us halfway." For a long moment, Nathan didn't say anything. Then he exhaled deeply, as if releasing a weight he'd carried for years. "Okay, I'll try. I don't want to be like this anymore." The morning continued with cautious conversation, small gestures of reconnection. I watched Nathan interact with Carol and Mom, and while it was tentative, there was progress. For the first time in years, he wasn't using manipulation as a shield or a weapon. Later, Emma pulled me aside. "Do you think he really means it?" she asked, eyes uncertain. I shrugged, trying to be honest without crushing hope. "I don't know, but even trying is better than pretending. At least he saw what he was doing and heard us." By the time lunch rolled around, the house had a strange calm. Nathan wasn't perfect, far from it, but the emotional battlefield from the previous day had quieted. It was the first step toward a healthy dynamic, and for once, it felt like maybe we could have a weekend together without the weight of guilt, manipulation, and silent resentment hanging over every conversation. The afternoon felt almost normal, like the house had exhaled after the emotional storm. Nathan was in the living room, quietly flipping through a magazine, and I could see him trying and really trying to appear calm. Mom and Aunt Carol were prepping snacks for later, and Emma was watching a show on her tablet. For the first time in days, it felt like we might actually have a peaceful visit. But peace, as we all know, never lasts long with Nathan. Later, while I was helping Mom with some dishes, I overheard him talking to Emma in a low voice. "Look, I know I screwed up yesterday, but you have to understand, I've always felt invisible. I just react in ways that make people notice me." Emma nodded cautiously. "I get it, Nathan, but you can't use it to guilt everyone or manipulate Mom and Carol. You have to let us help you without being controlling." He hesitated, looking like he was genuinely thinking about it. "I know, that just is hard. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it until it's too late." That was the breakthrough we'd been waiting for. Nathan's acknowledgement of his behaviour was small, but it was meaningful. However, as evening approached, tension began creeping back. Aunt Carol had invited a neighbour, Mrs. Jenkins, over for coffee, and Nathan immediately bristled. "Why does everyone else get attention except me?" he muttered under his breath as we sat at the table. Mom intervened gently. "Nathan, this isn't about ignoring you. We're just having guests over. You're part of the family, and you're welcome." But he wasn't satisfied. During the visit, every comment from Mrs. Jenkins, every laugh or smile directed at anyone but him became ammunition. He would mutter under his breath, make passive-aggressive jokes, or give exaggerated sighs of frustration. At one point, he leaned toward me and whispered, "See, they don't even care about what I do. I try to be normal, and nobody notices." I felt a pang of frustration mixed with sympathy. "Nathan, they do care, but you're letting yesterday's anger control today. You have to decide whether you want connection or conflict." He avoided my gaze, staring down at his hands, and for a long moment I thought he might argue. But then he exhaled and muttered, "Okay, I'll try to chill." It was tentative, fragile, but it was progress. The family slowly started to relax again. Aunt Carol even managed a small smile, and Mom looked relieved, though I could see the weariness in her eyes. By the end of the evening, Nathan had quietly helped Emma clear the table, apologised for a few passive-aggressive remarks, and even complimented Aunt Carol's cookies. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was a start. For the first time, it felt like Nathan might actually be capable of learning from his mistakes, of understanding the consequences of his toxic behaviour, and of taking real steps toward repairing the emotional damage he'd caused over the years. By the final morning of my visit, the house felt quieter, lighter in a way that didn't happen often when Nathan was around. He was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee in silence, and for the first time, he seemed reflective rather than defensive. Mom was bustling around, making breakfast, while Aunt Carol quietly cleaned up from the night before. Emma was still lounging with her tablet, occasionally chiming in with a smile or comment. It was ordinary, almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous day. Nathan cleared his throat. "Mom, Carol, I want to say sorry for everything yesterday. I was out of line. I didn't mean to make anyone feel hurt." Carol looked at him with cautious hope. "Thank you, Nathan. Apologies matter, but actions matter more. Do you understand that?" He nodded, slowly. "I think I do. I don't want to be that person anymore, the one who trusts everyone's emotions just to feel important. I want to, I don't know, do better." I stepped in, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering frustration. "Nathan, it's not going to be perfect overnight, but admitting your behaviour is the first step. Keep listening, keep trying. That's all anyone can ask." He managed a small, genuine smile for the first time that weekend. "Thanks, I'll try." Later, as we all sat around the table eating breakfast, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Nathan wasn't the centre of attention anymore, but he wasn't plotting or manipulating either. He participated in conversations, asked questions, and even laughed at Emma's jokes at simple, normal interactions that had been missing for years. Mom leaned over to me quietly. "It's not perfect, but it's progress. We'll have to keep boundaries and be careful, but maybe he can learn." I nodded. "Yeah, he's still Nathan, but at least now he's willing to admit when he's wrong. That's huge." Before I left later that day, Nathan came to the door. His expression was earnest, almost humble. "I know I've made things hard for everyone. Thanks for sticking around anyway. I really do want to change." I put a hand on his shoulder. "It won't be easy, but if you really try, you can make this work. We're family. That doesn't go away, even when things get messy." He nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes, and I realised that this visit, as toxic and draining as it had been, had created a small crack in the wall Nathan had built around himself. A crack that maybe, over time, could widen into understanding, connection, and genuine emotional growth. Driving away from the house, I felt exhausted but cautiously optimistic. The emotional manipulation, the guilt trips, the chaos, none of it had disappeared completely. But for the first time, it felt like there was a path forward, however fragile, and that was enough for now. The visit had been a battlefield, yes, but it was also a starting point. Nathan's toxic behaviour hadn't won and not entirely, and the family, though bruised, was still intact.